Hi, this is Sandra Hess, founder of DTC Wine Workshops, introducing Christopher Huber as he presents today's webinar on Savvy Selling Techniques.
Sandra, good morning everyone, and thanks for attending this Savvy Selling webinar today. As Sandra mentioned, my name is Christopher Huber, and my business is DTC Uncorked. I serve the winery industry, specifically the DTC channels, to open up new growth for your business. In this Savvy Selling program this morning, I'll be presenting. We'll be taking a look at 5 essential practices to equip and empower you to continue building your savvy selling abilities. It is simply a taste from the savvy selling bottle, if you will, albeit it might feel like a taste from the fire hose. The full Savvy Selling program is an experiential, exercise-driven, dialogue-rich workshop designed to take a deep dive into the tools, skills, and behaviors that contribute to growing sales competencies, with the end goal, of course, of selling more wine and selling more wine clubs. You know, whenever I do this program, I ask people, what draws the audience? In my workshops, I ask them, what draws you into the wine business? And as you'd expect, I hear a lot of answers that include, it's a fun business, I'm a hospitality person, I get to work in a beautiful environment, the perks are great. And rarely do I ever hear anyone say, because I like to sell. I believe because wanting to sell is not typically a primary driver for folks in the wine business. It warrants some real deliberate focus in order to nurture effective paradigms and skills to be confident and competent as a salesperson. The first practice I want to dive into a bit here is cultivating mindfulness in your approach to selling. You know, when I work with teams in the full Savvy Selling program, we often discover that there's more to selling than appears on the surface. There's the outer work, and then there's the inner work. There's a lot below the surface. By being mindful, I mean being open, aware, present, and flexible. Open and aware of our perceptions, belief systems, and biases that we may be holding around the topic of selling. This affects our performance. Being aware of whether or not these belief systems actually serve us or hinder us from excelling in our sales game. In neuroscience, there's this concept that you might be aware of called the negativity bias. This bias comes from a long time ago and is embedded into our brains since the day we roamed the earth as cavemen. We learn not to do things because of prior experience results. Don't just sit there when a wild animal is charging you. Remove your hand from that flame because it will burn you. Worthwhile learnings indeed. So the negativity bias can save us, befriend us, and it also can sneak up to us and make us its slave without us even realizing it. Negative experiences or fear of events have a far greater impact on people than more neutral or even positive experiences do. No doubt you always have heard in the hospitality business, this explains why dissatisfied customers will tell many, many more people about their poor experience as opposed to a positive experience. Rick Hansen, a neuroscientist and meditation teacher, says, our brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. So I don't mean to paint a sad picture here, but it's something that we just need to be mindful of and to really look at our paradigms, perspectives, and what drives us in our selling. So top reason for sales not happening, you know, you've probably heard there's 1 or 2 top ones that keep coming up, certainly in my research. The top one is fear of rejection. Another top sales blocker that you also probably heard is, or are aware of, is that people don't ask for the sale. So let's play with this paradigm of selling versus buying for a moment. And let me ask you to check in with yourself on this. If I say the word selling and ask you to make a list right now of the words you think of when I say selling, what would those be? I bet there are things that you've written down that say selling is pushy, selling is a slick used car salesman, selling is not sincere, I don't like being sold, I don't even like selling. Now, some of you may have written things down like selling is a skill, selling is a great challenge, I love selling. And let's take a look at the word buying. When I say buying, make a list of the first few things that pop into your mind when you think of buying. I'm willing to bet that there are some different words on this list. Things like fun, rewarding, fulfilling, meeting my needs, celebration. All right, so I like to refer to the practice of cultivating mindfulness as the inner work. Let's take a look at the outer work. The rest of the savvy selling model, the 4 practices that are skill-based, behavior-based, these guide us in our interactions, our moments of truth with our guests. Here's a bunch of words that relate to the concept of rapport. No doubt you're plenty familiar with. The phrase I like best is at the bottom of this: unconscious responsiveness. I submit to you that when you can deliberately choose your responsiveness, as opposed to unconsciously, that the rapport you create can be more thoughtful, authentic, sincere, and it really means something to the other person. They can tell the difference as opposed to the canned version of rapport. And we've all been on the receiving end of that. So what purpose does rapport serve? It builds trust. How do we connect with others? First and foremost, excelling with our hospitality skills. Nothing replaces these. These are the basics of both building rapport and excelling at hospitality. First impressions, one of my favorite quotes from Dale Carnegie: you don't get a second chance at a first impression. And then there's the power of using names and thank yous in building rapport. That is huge. Don't overlook it. How to connect with people, again, second slide here, speak their language. It's about common ground and respect. It's about nonverbals, and it's about a dialogue, not just a monologue. And that's something I think that in the wine industry we can get into, because we have so much we want to share in the tasting room about the varietals or about the process or about the estate, and to really understand and focus on creating a dialogue with the guest is a huge thing. Now, here's a concept called the power of 3 in rapport building. Think of famous threes: the 3 Stooges, the 3 Musketeers, the 3 Little Pigs. This is a rapport for practice, or a practice for building rapport. The rule of 3. It simply means use 3 connection points. Ask 3 questions. It's simple. There's more power in 3 connection points than just 1. It may take 3 tries to establish common ground. Where are you from is probably one of the most common heard rapport building questions on the planet. And if you've been there, great. If you haven't, it's not common ground. Another rapport building skill here, what's going on in these photos? If you're thinking mirroring or pacing, you're absolutely right. It's a naturally occurring phenomena, and you can deliberately choose to mirror to build rapport. You know that 93% of communication is nonverbal, 55% body language, the way you say the words 38%, leaving only 7% for the actual words you choose. What can we pace? Speech rate, word choice, volume, tone, gestures, emotions. No doubt that you know somebody who excels at this. Watch them the next time. One objection I hear is that we're busy, we're slammed at the bar, and I don't have time to use 3 building points for rapport. I was at a winery lately that had 60 guests at the bar. This is a big winery, and I waited for the person behind the bar to come over and greet me, and he saw that I was waiting for a while. And he came over, and he used 3 rapport points right away. Hi, my name is Jonathan. Thanks for coming in today. I saw you waiting till I could get over here, and I really appreciate your patience. Have you been here before? Then he went on to say, well, let me get you started with the pour of our Sauvignon Blanc. Not the details about it right now. There'll be plenty of time for that. But he just laid the foundation with 1, 2, 3, his name, thanking me, and a question to get the conversation started. And he did this with a sincere, authentic smile and great eye contact. It made a big impact. And it put me at ease, and I felt like I could really trust him and that he actually cared about me. The next practice is seeking to understand. That comes from 2 of my heroes, Stephen Covey from his book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and St. Francis of Assisi. First, seek not to be understood, but to understand. This is all about attuning yourself to your guest needs and interests. In traditional sales training, after the first step of building rapport, then comes this phase, which is typically called the qualifying phase. How is it that you seek to understand? Well, it's by asking really good questions. The purpose of understanding is to establish likes and interests and establish the buying motives. That's something that is sometimes overlooked when we think about trying to take care of people and we think about their likes and their dislikes and their needs. But the buying motivations are really key to selling. Asking right questions and then active listening. I won't get into that much. Again, you might be a great active listener or know somebody who's a great active listener, and it impacts people a lot. The types of questions are also important. These are pretty straightforward. Everyone has their favorite questions that they like to use when they're qualifying guests. The trick is to get in touch again with the buying motives. So let's take a look at some questions here. Do you like this wine? Perfectly fine question. A savvy question would be tweaking this question to get better information in the response. So what is it about the wine that you like would be a better question. What's your favorite wine? Again, a good question. What's your favorite wine you like to drink with a special meal at home, with family, or with friends? What type of wine do you like to drink? Which varietal do you enjoy sharing with friends? You can see how these questions will yield more valuable information for your processing in order to present, which is going to be the next phase of the selling model. Active listening skills, again. 3 levels of listening. The first level is when you hear yourself. For example, you hear your inner voice. You hear your inner critic. As your guest is talking, you're thinking about all the things you have to do after work tonight, the industry event that's happening, and this guy that just got here 3 minutes before closing, and he's from Pennsylvania. That's a great example of level 1 listening. Listening to the monologue, the judgments, inner critic, the voice inside of our own head. Level 2 is really them focused. It's I hear your words. I hear what you're saying and the meaning behind it. I heard my wife ask me last night to set the table for dinner. I heard her ask 3 times. I acknowledged her finally. The 4th time I moved to level 3, I heard the context that she was frustrated with me because I hadn't acknowledged her the first couple times and I hadn't moved to actually set the table. Then I realized, wow, I wasn't doing a very good job of modeling with my 8-year-old daughter. That's context. That's level 3 listening. So the next stage, after you understand where your guest is coming from and their buying motives and their needs and interests, is enticing. It's making the presentation to entice to purchase, whether it's a wine or a wine club or even their contact information. Here's some ways we can entice. Everybody has different thought bubbles. So, ways we can entice are compare and contrast wines. Create the visual. What I mean by the 3 F's is friends, family, and food. It's a powerful way to put people at the table to present their wine that they're interested in, that you've learned about, that they would like. Obviously, there's discoveries, there's stories, there's the lighter tastes. The purpose of enticing is to present things that meet the needs, align with their motives, and create value with the benefits of the wine. So if you know their needs and likes, then you can create the value. Presenting is all about, or there are a couple tools I'd like to share with you from the improvisational world. I mean, think about it. Being on stage in a tasting room is completely improvisational. Let's take a look at the first bullet. Make your partner, the guest, look good. Esteem them. Build them up authentically. To use another concept from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, make a deposit in their emotional bank account. And the second bullet is another improvisational skill. It's called yes and. This concept is all about taking whatever you have to work with from the experience in the moment, being mindful, and creatively using it to further the story, or in case of the tasting room, your guest's experience, their enticement to buy. It's a way of expanding, exploring, and building whatever is happening. It's a way of aligning with the guest. We all know what yes does, we all know what yes but does in a conversation. This is the opposite. It stops the conversation. Yes and includes. Here's an example. The guest is talking about how much they like this particular wine that you're showing them, and you say, I'm so glad that you enjoy this wine. That's the yes. And here comes the and. Can you imagine how much all of your guests would enjoy having this at your daughter's party this weekend? That gets them excited. The last practice is creating the opportunity to buy. And it's likely that if you successfully built rapport, have shown your guests that you understand them, and have enticed them by aligning with their needs and motives, that you've already created the opportunity to buy. I find that savvy salespeople recognize closing is an event. It's not an event, it's a process. It's like a funnel, with most of the volume comprising of their skill of building rapport and establishing needs. So here are some approaches that you can choose when you are creating that opportunity to purchase or to close. You're a trusted advisor at this point. These are the 5 most common approaches. No doubt you've seen these before. They're a lot of fun to play with because some of these are applicable for different people. Different people respond to different closes, as you know. A couple other things about creating an opportunity to purchase is helping them choose. That can be huge. No doubt you've experienced this. People are indecisive. They appreciate your guidance. Upselling, complimentary items, stating the value, and objections. Objections come up at this phase typically, if they're going to come up, and I'd like to challenge you to look at objections as questions. There's a simple pause, clarify, answer, confirm approach to translating or transferring an objection to a question so you can address it and meet their needs. Never ask, do you want? Why? They can always say no. Always create the opportunity. Again, it's one of the most common sales blockers there is. So, kind of wrapping up here, this is a wonderful book called Soft Sell by Tim Conner, and he has the 4 attributes of sales success skills broken down. Attitude, probably not surprising to you, is 50% of the pie. People skills, another 25%. So 75% is attitude and people skills, which is why in the workshop we really delve into cultivating mindfulness. Product knowledge is only 10%, and sales skills, 15%. Mindfulness, awareness, curiosity, cues, and self-care, these are the things that make up attitude. People skill, you can see the list of things that we talk about in this program that apply to people skills. Sales skills, really the savvy selling model, and of course, product knowledge. Thanks for coming along on this webinar this morning, for attending. I appreciate it. Here are the 3 areas of my business that I serve clients, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sandra. Thank you so much, Sandra.
And thank you so much, Christopher. Your points
Sandra.
Today and best practices that were shared are so insightful, and we so appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share today's webinar around savvy selling skills. I think obviously during the holidays and beyond, this is an ideal time to take some of the lessons that you've shared today and begin using them right away. I'm excited to test out a few of the tips that you've shared as well. So thanks once again. For those of you who would like to connect with Christopher Huber following today's webinar, he is offering a half-hour online consultation complimentary. So please do reach out.